She had survived poverty, betrayal, and a marriage that nearly broke her. But nothing could have prepared Amara Bennett for the moment she would stand face to face with the man who destroyed her, surrounded by cameras, while 3 children she'd never seen before called him Dad. The charity gala at the Metropolitan Museum was supposed to be her night of triumph. At 24 years old, Amara had clawed her way from the projects of South Chicago to the gleaming towers of Manhattan, building a skincare empire that had just been valued at $40 million. Her brand, Nubian Crown, celebrated black beauty with products formulated specifically for melanin-rich skin, a direct answer to an industry that had ignored women who looked like her for decades. She stood in the grand hall wearing a gold dress that shimmered like liquid sunlight against her deep brown skin, her natural curls styled in an elegant updo adorned with gold thread. Around her, New York's elite mingled beneath crystal chandeliers, their champagne glasses catching the light like scattered diamonds. She should have felt victorious. Instead, her stomach churned with an old, familiar dread, because across the room, holding court with a circle of admirers, stood Marcus Ashford III, her ex-husband, the billionaire heir who had married her in secret, kept her hidden like a shameful secret for 2 years, then divorced her with nothing but a non-disclosure agreement and enough money to disappear quietly. That had been 3 years ago, when she was 21 and stupid enough to believe that love could bridge the gap between a girl from the South Side and a man whose family owned half of Chicago's commercial real estate. If you're listening to this and want more stories like this one, don't forget to follow us and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapter of these incredible journeys. Don't forget to leave your like. Your support gives life to stories like this. Amara's best friend and business partner, Shanice, touched her arm. "Girl, you don't have to stay. We can leave right now." "No." Amara's voice was steady, even though her hands trembled slightly. "I earned my place here. I'm not running from him anymore." She had spent 3 years rebuilding herself. 3 years turning the pain of that marriage into fuel for her ambition. 3 years, proving that she was more than the poor black girl Marcus's family had dismissed as a gold digger. She wouldn't let him take this moment from her. But then Marcus saw her. Their eyes met across the crowded room, and something flickered in his expression. Surprise, perhaps, or recognition of how much she'd changed. He was still devastatingly handsome, with sharp cheekbones, perfectly styled dark hair, and the kind of confidence that came from never having to worry about money. He wore his tuxedo like armor, every inch the billionaire prince he'd been raised to be. Amara lifted her chin and turned away deliberately, focusing on the conversation around her. She was discussing a partnership with Sephora's vice president when she heard his voice behind her. Well, if it isn't my little charity project, all grown up." The words sliced through the ambient noise like a blade. Conversations around them stuttered to a halt. Amara felt every eye in their vicinity turn toward them, felt the weight of sudden attention like a physical pressure. She turned slowly, her expression carefully neutral. "Marcus, I didn't realize they let you out without a handler." His smile was cruel. "Still bitter, I see. Though I suppose I should have expected that. Some people just can't accept when they're out of their league." "Is that what you tell yourself?" Amara's voice remained calm, but her heart pounded. "That I was out of my league, not that you were too much of a coward to stand up to your family." Marcus's eyes hardened. He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only those nearest could hear. But in the sudden hush, his words carried farther than he probably intended. "You were a mistake, Amara. A pretty face from the wrong side of the tracks who thought she could play in the big leagues. My family was right about you. You were just after the money. That's rich, coming from a man who's never earned a dollar in his life that Daddy didn't give him first." The crowd around them had grown larger now, phones emerging from purses and pockets. Amara could see the social media posts already forming. Billionaire heir confronts ex-wife at charity gala. The thought made her sick, but she refused to back down. Marcus laughed, the sound sharp and dismissive. "At least I come from money. You showed up at my door with nothing but ambition and a tight dress. We both know what you were really after." The insult hung in the air like poison. Amara felt Shanice stiffen beside her, felt the judgment of the crowd pressing in. This was what she'd feared, being reduced once again to a stereotype, to the angry black woman or the gold digger, stripped of the empire she'd built through her own sweat and brilliance. "You're pathetic," she said quietly, "still trying to make yourself feel big by making others feel small. I don't need to try, sweetheart. I am big, billion-dollar big. While you're playing dress-up with your little beauty company, pretending to belong in rooms like this." Before continuing, don't forget to subscribe to help bring stories like this to life. Actually, her company is worth 40 million and growing. Can you say the same about any business you've built yourself? The new voice cut through the tension like sunlight through storm clouds. Amara turned to see a tall black man in an impeccably tailored navy suit approaching. He was perhaps in his late 30s, with a close-cropped beard, kind eyes, and the kind of presence that commanded attention without demanding it. "Dr. Isaiah Collins," he introduced himself, extending his hand to Amara. "I've been following Nubian Crown's trajectory. Impressive work, Ms. Bennett." Before Amara could respond, a commotion erupted near the entrance. 3 children, 2 boys and a girl, ranging in age from about 4 to 8, came running through the crowd, their fancy clothes slightly disheveled, a harried-looking nanny chasing after them. "Daddy! Daddy!" they called out, their voices high and excited. They ran straight to Marcus. Amara felt the world tilt. She watched as Marcus's face transformed from smug superiority to something like panic. The children surrounded him, tugging at his jacket, talking over each other in their eagerness to tell him something about a fountain they'd found. "I didn't know you had children," someone murmured nearby. "Neither did I," another voice responded. Marcus's face had gone pale. He tried to smile, to maintain his composure, but Amara could see the fear in his eyes. Because everyone in this room knew that Marcus had been engaged to Senator Whitmore's daughter, Catherine, for the past 2 years. Catherine, who stood frozen across the room, her perfect blonde hair and perfect dress and perfect pedigree suddenly meaning nothing in the face of 3 beautiful mixed-race children calling Marcus Daddy. The oldest boy, who looked about 8, had Marcus's eyes and cheekbones, but darker skin and tight curls. The girl, perhaps 6, had the same combination of features. The youngest boy was clearly biracial, his looser curls and lighter complexion making the family resemblance unmistakable. Who is their mother? The question rippled through the crowd like wildfire. Amara found herself thinking the same thing. These children were too old to have been conceived during their marriage, which meant, "Mr. Ashford," a new voice interrupted. A woman in her 50s, elegantly dressed and radiating authority, stepped forward. "I believe we need to talk about the trust funds you've been hiding and the 3 children you've been denying." Marcus's face went from pale to ashen. "Mrs. Richardson, this isn't the time." "On the contrary, this is exactly the time. You see, I'm the executor of your grandmother's estate." The grandmother who specifically included provisions for all of her great-grandchildren in her will, the same will you've been trying to contest for the past year. She turned to address the room, her voice clear and sharp. "These children are Eleanor Ashford's great-grandchildren. They're entitled to their inheritance. An inheritance worth approximately $200 million that Marcus Ashford III has been attempting to steal by claiming they don't exist." The room erupted. Cameras flashed. Marcus grabbed the woman's arm, his composure finally shattering. "You can't do this here. I just did. And before the night is over, Everyone in this room will know that you've been paying off their mother for years to keep them secret, that you've denied your own children, that you've lied to Catherine, to your family, to everyone." Amara stood frozen, trying to process what she was hearing, but her attention was pulled away by a gentle touch on her arm. Dr. Isaiah Collins was still there, his expression concerned. "Perhaps we should step outside," he suggested quietly. "This is about to get ugly." But Amara couldn't move, because the oldest boy was staring at her now, his young face scrunched in confusion. "And Daddy, who is that pretty lady? Why did you say mean things to her?" Marcus didn't answer. He was too busy trying to control the damage, to silence Mrs. Richardson, to salvage what was left of his reputation. The boy walked toward Amara, innocent and curious. "You're really pretty. Are you a princess?" Despite everything, Amara felt her heart melt a little. "Thank you, sweetheart. What's your name?" "Julian." "That's my sister Maya and my brother Noah." He pointed to his siblings, who were now being corralled by their nanny, away from the chaos. "Our daddy is usually nice. I don't know why he was mean to you." "Julian, come here." Marcus's voice was sharp now, desperate, but the boy ignored him, looking up at Amara with those familiar eyes. "Do you know my daddy?" Before Amara could answer, Mrs. Richardson spoke again, her voice cutting through the noise. "Ms. Bennett, you might be interested to know that your divorce settlement was fraudulent. Marcus claimed he had no significant assets at the time, but he was actually in the process of taking control of a family trust worth over $50 million. Money that should have been divided in your divorce." The room spun. Amara grabbed the edge of a nearby table to steady herself. "What?" "He lied to you. He lied to the court. And I have the documents to prove it." Mrs. Richardson opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "I've been investigating Marcus's finances for months as part of the estate proceedings. What I found was systematic fraud, hidden accounts, and a pattern of deception that goes back years." Shanice was beside her now, holding her steady. Dr. Collins had produced a chair from somewhere, and Amara sank into it gratefully. "Why are you telling me this?" Amara managed to ask. "Why now?" Mrs. Richardson's expression softened. "Because Eleanor Ashford was my closest friend for 30 years, and before she died, she told me that she suspected her grandson was hiding something terrible. She made me promise to find the truth and make it right. No matter who it hurt, she believed in justice, Miss Bennett, real justice, not the kind money can buy." Marcus was trying to leave now, gathering the children, his face a mask of fury and fear. But security had appeared at the exits, not the museum security, Amara realized, but private guards. Mrs. Richardson had planned this confrontation down to the last detail. "You can't keep me here," Marcus snarled. "I haven't done anything illegal." "Actually, you have. Fraud, perjury, embezzlement from your grandmother's trust." Mrs. Richardson's voice was ice-cold. "The district attorney will be very interested in what I have to show them." "As will the IRS." Catherine Whitmore pushed through the crowd, her face red with humiliation and rage. "How could you?" she screamed at Marcus. "We were going to be married. My father was going to back your Senate campaign. You told me you loved me." "Catherine, let me explain." "Explain what? That you have 3 secret children, that you've been lying to everyone, that you're a fraud." She ripped the engagement ring from her finger and threw it at him. It bounced off his chest and clattered to the marble floor, the diamond catching the light one last time before rolling away into the crowd. In the chaos, Amara found herself looking at the 3 children again. They looked scared now, confused by the adult drama swirling around them. The nanny was trying to comfort them, but they were crying, overwhelmed. Without thinking, Amara stood and walked over to them. She knelt down so she was at eye level with Julian. "Hey, it's okay," she said softly. "Everything's going to be okay." "Is our daddy in trouble?" Julian asked, tears streaming down his face. Amara didn't know how to answer that, but before she could try, a new voice spoke from behind her. Yes, he is. But you're not. You're going to be just fine. Amara turned to find an elegant black woman in her 40s standing there, dressed in a simple but expensive dress. She had the same eyes as the children, the same bone structure. Their mother, Amara realized. I'm Nadine, the woman said, meeting Amara's gaze directly, and I think you and I need to talk, because Marcus Ashford has been playing both of us for fools, and it's time we learned the whole truth. She extended her hand to Amara. My children deserve better than lies and secrets. And from what I've been hearing, so do you. Amara took her hand, feeling the strange connection of two women bound by the same man's deception. Before we do that, Mrs. Richardson interrupted, there's something else you both need to know. Eleanor Ashford's will contained a provision that neither of you are aware of, a provision that changes everything. She pulled out a sealed envelope, the wax seal bearing the Ashford family crest. This was to be opened only in the event that Marcus's deceptions were revealed. That time has come. She broke the seal and began to read aloud. If you are hearing this, then my grandson has proven himself to be the man I feared he was becoming. In that case, I leave the entirety of my personal fortune, separate from the family trusts and business holdings, to be divided equally among his children and any woman he has wronged through his lies. Amara felt her knees go weak. How much? Mrs. Richardson looked up, her eyes gleaming. $1.2 billion. The room exploded into chaos, but Amara barely heard it. Because standing in the doorway, having just arrived, was Marcus's father, the patriarch of the Ashford family himself, and the expression on his face suggested that the night's revelations were far from over. Leave in the comments below where you're watching from. We'd love to know which part of the world is experiencing this journey with us. Your support means everything. The private room at the museum was opulent and suffocating at the same time. Heavy velvet curtains blocked out the sounds of the continuing gala. But Amara could still feel the weight of 100 conversations happening about her beyond those walls, about all of them. She sat on a Louis XVI chair that probably cost more than her first car, trying to process everything that had happened in the last hour. Nadine sat across from her, her 3 children finally calmed and taken to a quieter space by their nanny, Mrs. Richardson stood like a general before troops, organizing documents on an antique writing desk, and Marcus sat in the corner, his father looming over him like a dark cloud. Richard Ashford II was everything his son pretended to be, genuinely powerful, genuinely intimidating, genuinely in control. He was in his 60s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, wearing his authority like a second skin. Unlike Marcus's performative cruelty, Richard's cold assessment of the situation felt surgical, calculated. Explain, he said to Marcus, his voice devoid of emotion. Explain how my grandson, my heir, has managed to embarrass this family so thoroughly in one evening. Marcus opened his mouth, but no words came out. For perhaps the first time in his life, he had no clever retort, no dismissive insult to deflect attention. Amara found herself almost pitying him. Almost. Mr. Ashford, Mrs. Richardson began, perhaps it would be more productive if I provided the timeline I've constructed through my investigation. Richard turned to her, his expression unreadable. Proceed. Mrs. Richardson opened one of her folders. 7 years ago, Marcus began a relationship with Nadine Williams, a medical student at Northwestern. She became pregnant with Julian when Marcus was 23. Rather than acknowledge his son, Marcus paid Nadine a substantial sum, $1 million, to relocate to Boston and keep the child's existence secret. Nadine's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Amara found herself looking at the other woman with new understanding. $1 million might sound like a lot to most people, but for a scared 20-something pregnant woman facing the power of the Ashford family, it must have seemed like both a blessing and a trap. 2 years later, Mrs. Richardson continued, while still financially supporting Nadine and Julian in secret, Marcus began a relationship with Amara Bennett. They married in a private ceremony in Lake Geneva when Amara was 21. Marcus kept the marriage hidden from his family for 2 years. I knew. Richard interrupted quietly. Everyone turned to stare at him. He met Amara's eyes directly. I knew about the marriage. My mother knew. We said nothing because Eleanor believed that perhaps you might be good for my son, that perhaps love might make him into something better than he was becoming. The revelation hit Amara like a physical blow. They had known. All that time Marcus had told her they had to keep it secret because his family would never accept her, because they were too controlling, too traditional, too racist. All of it had been a lie. You knew. Her voice came out as a whisper. Richard nodded. We knew, and we waited to see if Marcus would be man enough to claim his wife publicly. He wasn't. You let me think I was the dirty secret, Amara said, her voice growing stronger with anger. You let me believe I wasn't good enough. We hoped you would make him better. We were wrong. Richard's admission held no apology, just statement of fact. My mother, however, never gave up on the idea that Marcus might change. She left provisions in her will accordingly. Mrs. Richardson cleared her throat. During the marriage to Miss Bennett, Marcus also resumed his relationship with Nadine. Maya was conceived while Marcus was still legally married to Amara. The room went silent. Amara felt bile rise in her throat. She had suspected Marcus of infidelity during their marriage. There had been too many late nights, too many suspicious phone calls. But she had convinced herself she was being paranoid, that it was just his demanding work schedule. You son of a bitch, she breathed. When Eleanor Ashford discovered that Marcus had children he was denying, Mrs. Richardson pressed on. She added a codicil to her will. She established that her personal fortune would be held in trust until such time as Marcus's character became clear. If he proved himself honorable, the money would be his. If not, it would go to his victims, Richard finished. To the women he'd wronged and the children he'd denied, my mother believed in accountability. She believed that money without character was poison. She was right. Nadine spoke for the first time, her voice steady and clear. Yes, I've spent 7 years living on Marcus's hush money, watching my children grow up, wondering why their father never visited, why they couldn't tell anyone his name. I convinced myself I was protecting them, but I was just protecting him. Amara looked at Nadine, really looked at her. She was beautiful in a quiet, dignified way. There was strength in the set of her shoulders, intelligence in her eyes. She wasn't a villain in this story. She was another woman who'd been manipulated by Marcus's charm and trapped by his money. When did you find out about me? Amara asked. 2 years ago. I hired a private investigator when Noah was born, and Marcus started pressuring me to sign new non-disclosure agreements. I wanted to know what he was so afraid of people finding out. Nadine pulled out her phone and scrolled through photos. When I found out he'd been married to you while sleeping with me, while promising me that we'd be together, once his family came around, I realized he was never going to choose any of us. We were all just secrets to him. She handed her phone to Amara. The screen showed photographs, Marcus and Nadine at what looked like a private resort. Marcus holding baby Maya, Marcus with Julian at a park somewhere secluded. In every photo, Marcus looked genuinely happy in a way Amara had rarely seen during their marriage. He loved you, Amara heard herself say. Or at least, he looked like he did. He loved the control, Nadine corrected. He loved having a secret family he could visit whenever he wanted, with children who adored him and a woman who asked nothing of him except his presence. No pressure, no publicity, no reality. Just a fantasy he could step into and out of at will. And meanwhile, he was engaged to Catherine Whitmore, Mrs. Richardson added, the perfect society bride who would give him political connections and social legitimacy. He was trying to have it all, the secret family, the bitter ex-wife paid off and silenced, and the golden future with a senator's daughter. Richard Ashford stood abruptly. Marcus, leave. Father, leave. Go to the estate on Long Island. Stay there until I summon you. You are not to speak to the press. You are not to contact Catherine Whitmore. You are not to do anything except think about what you've done. Do I make myself clear? For a moment, Amara thought Marcus might actually argue, but something in his father's expression must have convinced him otherwise. He stood, straightened his jacket with shaking hands, and walked to the door. He paused there, looking back at Amara. For just a second, she saw something in his eyes, regret maybe, or recognition of what he'd lost, but then it was gone, replaced by the same cold arrogance he'd always hidden behind. You still won't ever really belong in this world, Amara, he said softly. Money can't buy that. No, Dr. Isaiah Collins spoke from the doorway, where he'd been standing so quietly, Amara had almost forgotten he was there. But character can, and that's something you'll never have, no matter how much money your family has. Marcus left without another word. The door closed behind him with a soft click that felt like the end of a chapter. Richard turned to Amara and Nadine. My mother's will stipulates that you must both agree to pursue legal action against Marcus for the fraud committed against you. If you do, and if you can prove that he deliberately deceived you both, the money is yours. Split evenly between you and the children. Do you understand what that means? Amara did the math in her head. 1.2 billion divided between 2 women and 3 children, even split 5 ways. That was nearly $250 million each. More money than she could spend in a lifetime, enough to change everything. What's the catch? She asked. No catch, but it will mean public testimony, depositions, media attention. Your entire relationship with Marcus will become public knowledge. Everything you suffered, everything he did to you, all of it will be examined in court and in the press. Amara thought about her company, about the carefully crafted image she'd built over the past 3 years. She thought about the blog posts she'd written about self-worth and independence, about rising above toxic relationships. She told her story in vague terms, positioning herself as a survivor without naming names, without revealing the full extent of Marcus's betrayal. Going public would mean reliving it all. It would mean admitting that she'd been someone's secret, someone's shame. It would mean the world knowing that the confident businesswoman they admired had once been a scared 21-year-old who'd signed away her rights for a fraction of what she deserved. I need time to think, she said. Of course. Richard pulled out a business card and handed it to her. My mother trusted Mrs. Richardson with this task because she trusted her to be fair. Whatever you decide, know that the choice is yours. No pressure from the family. My mother made sure of that. He moved to the door, then paused. For what it's worth, Miss Bennett, I'm sorry. Sorry for my son. Sorry for my family's role in your pain, and sorry that my mother's kindness came too late to prevent your suffering. She spoke highly of you, you know. She followed your business. She was proud of what you'd built from the ashes of your marriage to her grandson. He left before Amara could respond, leaving her alone with Nadine, Mrs. Richardson, and Dr. Collins. Nadine stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. I'm going to do it, she said quietly. I'm going to testify, going to tell the truth about everything. My children deserve better than being hidden. They deserve their inheritance. Yes, but more than that, They deserve to exist in the world without shame. She turned to face Amara. But I won't do it if it will hurt you. If you need to protect your privacy, your business, I understand. The money doesn't matter to me as much as the principle. My children are already provided for. I can walk away from this if you need me to. Amara studied the other woman. There was no manipulation in her offer, no hidden agenda, just one woman extending grace to another. I'll think about it, Amara repeated. I need to process all of this. Take all the time you need, Mrs. Richardson said, gathering her documents. I'll be in touch in a few days. For now, I suggest you both go home, rest, and consider your options. She left, and then it was just Amara, Nadine, and Dr. Collins. I should go check on the children, Nadine said. But Amara, thank you for being kind to them tonight. Julian hasn't stopped talking about the pretty princess lady who made him feel safe. She left, and suddenly Amara was alone with the man who had appeared like a guardian angel in the middle of her public humiliation. Dr. Isaiah Collins smiled gently. That was quite an evening. That's one way to put it. Amara laughed, but it came out shaky. Thank you for stepping in earlier. You didn't have to do that. Actually, I did. I couldn't stand by and watch him belittle you like that. He pulled up a chair and sat across from her, maintaining a respectful distance. I meant what I said about Nubian Crown. I've been following your company's progress. It's genuinely impressive work. You're a doctor. Why would you follow a skincare company? I'm a dermatologist. Skincare is literally my specialty. He grinned. And before you ask, yes, I focus on skin of color. There's a massive gap in dermatological research and treatment for melanin-rich skin. What you're doing with Nubian Crown, formulating products specifically for black women, educating about hyperpigmentation and scarring, celebrating natural beauty, it aligns with everything I believe in professionally. Despite everything, Amara found herself intrigued. So tonight wasn't a coincidence. You came to the gala to meet me. Guilty, though I certainly didn't expect quite this much drama. His expression turned serious. Are you okay? Really okay? The simple question, asked with genuine concern, broke something in Amara. She felt tears welling up and fought them back. I don't know, she admitted. I thought I was over him. I thought I'd moved past all of that pain. But tonight, hearing that he lied about everything, that his family knew about our marriage, that he was with Nadine while married to me, it makes me question everything I thought I knew. You're allowed to feel hurt. You're allowed to grieve, even for something that ended 3 years ago. Finding out new betrayals doesn't mean you weren't strong before. It just means you have new wounds to heal. Amara wiped at her eyes. I need to leave. I can't stay here. Let me take you home, Isaiah offered, or at least get you a car. You shouldn't be alone right now. Actually, she won't be alone. They both turned to find Shanice standing in the doorway, her expression fierce. Because I'm going to tell her something I should have told her 3 years ago. Something about Marcus Ashford that I've been keeping secret because I thought it would hurt her more to know. She walked into the room, pulled out her phone, and turned the screen toward Amara. I hired a private investigator when you and Marcus got divorced, because something about the settlement never sat right with me. And I found something that changes everything you think you know about why he really divorced you. The photo on the screen showed Marcus having dinner with another woman. A woman Amara recognized from her wedding, Marcus's cousin, Diana Ashford. But they weren't sitting like family. They were holding hands across the table, looking at each other the way lovers do. That photo is from 2 years into your marriage, Shanice said quietly. And it's not the only one. Amara, I think Marcus divorced you because he was in love with his cousin, and I think his whole family knew about it. The revelation hit Amara like a tsunami. She stared at the photo on Shanice's phone, her mind refusing to process what she was seeing. Marcus and Diana, Marcus and his own cousin, during their marriage. That's not possible, she heard herself say. She was nice to me. She was the only one in his family who seemed to accept me. Shanice sat down heavily, her own expression pained. I know. That's why I didn't tell you. After the divorce, after you'd already been through so much, I couldn't bring myself to add this to your pain. I told myself it didn't matter anymore, that Marcus was in your past, that knowing would only hurt you. But now it matters, Isaiah said quietly, because this might be the real reason for the divorce. The real reason Marcus kept Amara hidden. Mrs. Richardson appeared in the doorway again, her timing impeccable. Or perhaps, Amara thought with a chill, she'd been listening all along. "May I see that photo?" she asked. Shanice handed over her phone. Mrs. Richardson studied it for a long moment, then pulled out her own phone and made a call. "Richard, it's Eleanor's executor. We have a situation. I'm sending you a photo. Call me back immediately." She hung up and turned to Amara. "How much do you know about the Ashford family structure?" "Almost nothing. Marcus never talked about it. I met his parents a handful of times, always in private. Diana was the only family member who seemed to want to know me." "Diana Ashford is not technically Marcus's cousin," Mrs. Richardson said carefully. "She's the daughter of Richard's younger brother, Thomas, who died in a car accident when Diana was 12. Richard and Eleanor raised her alongside Marcus. They grew up as close as siblings." "Which makes this even sicker," Shanice muttered. "Actually," Mrs. Richardson continued, "it makes it legally significant. There's a very old provision in the Ashford family trust, dating back to the 1800s when the family fortune was first established. It states that if a direct heir to the primary fortune produces a child with another member of the bloodline, that child has special claim to certain assets." Amara felt the room tilt again. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying that if Marcus and Diana had a child together, that child would have access to trusts and properties that even Marcus doesn't control. Old money, protected by generations of legal maneuvering. Money that's meant to keep the bloodline pure and the fortune concentrated. That's medieval," Isaiah said, disgust clear in his voice. "That's old money," Mrs. Richardson corrected, "and it explains why Marcus might have hidden a relationship with Diana, why he might have married you as a cover, why he might have—" Her phone rang. She answered, listened for a moment, then put it on speaker. Richard Ashford's voice filled the room, tight with controlled rage. Where did you get that photograph?" "From Ms. Bennett's business partner, who hired a private investigator 3 years ago. And you're certain of the date?" "The metadata confirms it, 2 years into Marcus and Amara's marriage." There was a long silence. Then Richard spoke again, his voice heavy with something that might have been grief. "Bring everyone to the estate. Tonight, I need to show you something. Something my mother left for this exact circumstance. Richard, my son has been lying to me for years, to all of us, and I think my mother knew. She always knew. That's why she structured her will the way she did. That's why she insisted on the investigation clause." He hung up. Mrs. Richardson looked at Amara, Shanice, and Isaiah. "Well," she said dryly, "I suppose we're going to Long Island." The Ashford estate on Long Island was like something out of a Fitzgerald novel, all sprawling lawns and stately architecture, old money literally built into every stone. Amara had never been here during her marriage to Marcus. Another secret, another place she wasn't allowed to exist. They arrived close to midnight. Richard Ashford met them at the door, looking like he'd aged a decade in the past few hours. Behind him, Amara could see Marcus, sitting in what looked like a formal study, his head in his hands. "This way," Richard said, leading them not toward Marcus, but in the opposite direction, toward a wing of the house that looked older than the rest. They walked through hallways lined with family portraits, generations of Ashfords staring down at them with varying degrees of judgment and privilege. Amara found herself looking for Marcus's grandmother in the paintings, but couldn't identify her. Eleanor hated having her portrait painted, Richard said, noticing her search. She said it was vanity. She preferred to be known by her actions, not her face. He stopped before a heavy wooden door and pulled out an old-fashioned key. My mother's private study. She was the only one allowed in here. I respected that, even after her death. But she left instructions that this room should be opened if Marcus's true character ever came to light. The door swung open, revealing a cozy, book-lined room that felt more lived in than any other space Amara had seen in the estate. It felt like Eleanor, warm where the rest of the house was cold, personal where everything else was formal. Richard walked to a portrait on the wall, not of Eleanor herself, but of a young black woman in 1940s attire, smiling at the camera with intelligence and warmth in her eyes. My mother's best friend, Richard explained, Sarah Washington. They met at Columbia in 1945, when it was still rare for women to attend university, and even rarer for black and white women to be friends. Sarah was brilliant, a mathematician who helped with early computer programming during the war. She and my mother were inseparable. He pulled on the edge of the portrait frame, and it swung forward on hidden hinges, revealing a wall safe behind it. My mother told me once that Sarah taught her the most important lesson of her life, that character matters more than breeding, that dignity comes from within, and that the measure of a person is how they treat those with less power than themselves. He opened the safe and pulled out a leather-bound journal. She also told me that if my children or grandchildren ever forgot that lesson, I should read what's in here. He handed the journal to Amara. This is for you, all of you, my mother's words, in her own hand. Amara opened the journal with trembling fingers. The first page was dated 3 months before Eleanor Ashford's death. If you're reading this, then my worst fears about Marcus have been confirmed. I hoped I was wrong. I prayed I was wrong. But a grandmother knows her grandchild's heart, even when that heart is dark. I first suspected Marcus's true nature when he was 16, and his father caught him bullying a scholarship student at his private school. Not just teasing, true cruelty, designed to make the boy feel less than human because of his poverty. Richard punished him, of course, but Marcus never showed remorse. He learned to hide it better. When he brought Amara to meet me in secret, I felt hope. She was everything I'd wanted Marcus to become, strong, genuine, self-made. I thought perhaps love might save him. I told Richard we should support the marriage, should welcome her publicly. Marcus forbade it, claimed he needed time to prepare the family. But I had the house staff report to me. I knew about the way Marcus kept Amara isolated, the way he belittled her in private while presenting a perfect face to her in public. I knew about the separate apartments, the nights he came home smelling of someone else's perfume, the credit cards he refused to give her. I confronted him once. He laughed and said I was too old to understand modern marriage. He said Amara knew her place. Amara's hands shook so hard she nearly dropped the journal. Shanice steadied her, reading over her shoulder. I hired investigators. I discovered Nadine and Julian. I discovered the payments, the threats, the legal maneuvering to ensure the child could never claim the Ashford name. I confronted Marcus again. This time he told me to mind my own business. But it was Diana who truly broke my heart. Diana, who I raised as my own granddaughter. Diana, who I loved as much as Marcus. When I discovered their relationship, when I realized what they were planning, I wept for days. They thought they were clever. They thought I wouldn't notice the way they looked at each other, the private conversations, the trips they took separately that just happened to be to the same locations. They thought I wouldn't find out about the child. Amara stopped reading. Child, Richard nodded grimly. Keep reading. Diana gave birth to Marcus's son 2 years ago. They've kept him hidden even more carefully than Julian and Maya and Noah, because this child, Thomas Marcus Ashford, named after Diana's father, has claimed to trusts worth over $5 billion under the old family provisions. They planned to announce the child once Marcus had secured his political future, once he'd married Catherine Whitmore and established himself as respectable. They planned to claim Diana had married someone else and divorced, that the child was from that marriage. They had paperwork prepared, a fake father ready to claim paternity for a fee, everything arranged, but I changed my will. I made sure that if this deception came to light, the money would go elsewhere. To the women Marcus wronged, to the children he denied, to anyone with more character than my grandson, Amara, if you're reading this, and I hope you are, know that you were never the problem. You were never too poor, too black, too anything. You were too good for my grandson. You still are. Take the money, use it to build your empire, use it to help other women see their worth. Use it to make the world a little more just, and forgive an old woman for not being brave enough to save you when she still had the chance. With love and regret, Eleanor Ashford. The room was silent. Amara closed the journal carefully and handed it back to Richard. "Where is Diana now?" she asked, her voice surprisingly steady. "Upstairs, with her son. I've called them both down." Richard's face was ashen. "I didn't know. I swear to you, I didn't know about the child. My mother kept this from me, perhaps because she knew I would confront them, that I might handle it poorly in my anger. Or perhaps because she knew you'd be heartbroken," Mrs. Richardson said gently. "Richard, you raised Diana. You loved her as a daughter. Finding out she was part of this deception, Eleanor might have wanted to protect you from that pain until there was no choice." Footsteps in the hallway announced new arrivals. Diana Ashford entered the room carrying a toddler. A beautiful boy with Marcus's eyes and Diana's delicate features. Behind her came Marcus, his expression stricken. Diana stopped when she saw Amara, all the color drained from her face. "Amara," she whispered, "I can explain. Can you?" Amara stood, facing the woman who had pretended to be her friend while sleeping with her husband. "Can you explain how you smiled at me at my wedding while planning to steal my husband? Can you explain how you sat with me and listened to me cry about feeling isolated and unwelcome in this family, all while you were the reason Marcus kept me hidden?" "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like, Diana? Tell me. I'd love to know." "Doctor." Isaiah Collins spoke from the corner where he'd been quietly observing. "Actually, I think we're all curious, because from where I'm standing, this looks like two people conspired to use a young black woman as a cover for their incestuous relationship, traumatized multiple other women in the process, and denied 5 children their birthright. So please, explain how it wasn't like that." Diana's composure cracked. "You don't understand what it's like. The pressure of this family, the expectations. Marcus and I, we were all each other had growing up. We fell in love, real love, not the shallow thing he had with—" She stopped, realizing what she was about to say. "With me," Amara finished for her. "Not the shallow thing he had with me. Is that what you were going to say?" "We didn't mean for anyone to get hurt," Marcus said quietly. "We just wanted to be together. So you married me as a cover. Cheated on me with her, convinced me I was the problem, that I wasn't good enough, that I was too sensitive, too demanding." Amara's voice rose. "You made me question my own sanity, Marcus. You gaslit me for 2 years, then divorced me and made me think it was my fault." "I'm sorry," he whispered. "No, you're caught. That's not the same as sorry." Richard Ashford moved to stand beside Amara, a gesture of solidarity she hadn't expected. "Marcus, Diana, you will both cooperate fully with Mrs. Richardson's investigation. You will provide all documentation, all communication, all evidence of your deception. You will testify under oath to everything you've done. And when this is over, you will accept whatever consequences come." "Father," Marcus began. "You are no son of mine," Richard said, his voice breaking. "Not anymore. My mother was right. Character matters, and you have none." He turned to Amara. "And whatever you need from me, testimony, documents, public support, you have it. My mother wanted justice for you. I intend to see that you get it." But before Amara could respond, the toddler in Diana's arms started crying, and in his wails, in the confusion and fear on his innocent face, Amara saw the real tragedy. 6 children now, 6 children who would grow up knowing their parents had been exposed as liars and cheats. 6 children who would carry this shame forever. Unless someone broke the cycle. "I want to meet them," Amara heard herself say. "All of the children, Julian, Maya, Noah, and—" She looked at Diana. "What's his name?" "Thomas," Diana whispered. "Tommy. I want to meet Tommy, and I want Nadine here, because whatever we decide next, it affects those children, and they deserve adults who will put them first for once." Mrs. Richardson pulled out her phone. "I'll call Nadine now. And while we wait," Isaiah added, "I think Marcus and Diana need to tell us the complete truth. All of it. No more secrets, no more lies. Because before any decision gets made about money or justice or anything else, we need to know exactly what we're dealing with." Marcus and Diana exchanged a look. And in that moment, Amara saw real fear in their eyes, because the truth was about to come out. All of it. And something told her that even with all the revelations of tonight, they hadn't yet heard the worst of it. It took an hour for Nadine to arrive with her children. In that hour, sitting in Amara Ashford's private study, while Marcus and Diana prepared to confess everything, Amara found herself in an unexpected conversation with Richard Ashford. "My mother used to bring me into this room when I was a boy," he said, running his hand along the spines of the books. "She talked to me about responsibility, about what it means to have wealth and power. She'd say that money makes you more of what you already are. If you're generous, it makes you more generous. If you're cruel, it makes you more cruel." He turned to face Amara. "I failed her. I raised a son who used his privilege as a weapon. And I failed you. I should have insisted that Marcus claim you publicly. I should have questioned why he wanted to keep his marriage secret. I was a coward. You're not the one who owes me an apology," Amara said quietly. "Perhaps not legally, but morally. Yes, I am." He pulled out his phone and showed her a photo. Amara Ashford, a tiny woman with sharp eyes and a warm smile. "My mother would have liked you, not because of what you've accomplished, though she would have admired that, but because you have something Marcus will never have, integrity." The door opened and Nadine entered, her 3 children in tow. Julian ran straight to Amara. "Princess Lady," he exclaimed, "we went on a plane, a private plane. It was so cool." Amara knelt down to his level. "That does sound cool. Are you okay? I know tonight was scary. Mama says we're going to learn the truth about our daddy." "Is that why we're here?" Out of the mouths of children, Amara thought. "Yes, sweetheart, that's why we're all here." Nadine met her eyes over Julian's head. "Thank you for calling me, for including me in this. We're in this together," Amara said simply. "All of us." Mrs. Richardson had arranged chairs in a semicircle, creating an informal court. Marcus and Diana sat in the center, Richard beside them like a judge. Amara, Nadine, and Isaiah sat opposite. Shanice stood behind Amara, a supportive hand on her shoulder. The children had been taken to another room with the nanny and staff. They didn't need to hear this. "Begin," Richard said to his son. "Tell them everything." Marcus took a deep breath. In the lamplight, he looked younger than his 28 years, almost vulnerable. But Amara hardened her heart against any sympathy. "Diana and I fell in love when I was 17 and she was 16, he began. "I know how that sounds." It sounds like you were teenagers, Isaiah interrupted. Being a teenager isn't the crime. What you did afterward, that's the crime. Marcus nodded. Our families would never have accepted it. The blood relation, even though we're technically cousins, is too close for social acceptance. And there were the trust provisions. We didn't know about them then, but we knew there would be complications. So we decided to wait, Diana continued, her voice soft, to build our own lives separately, to see if what we felt was real or just teenage proximity. I went to Paris to study art. Marcus went to Yale. And we dated other people, Marcus added. It was supposed to be an experiment, a way to test our feelings. I dated casually throughout college. But the summer after graduation, Diana came back from Paris and we realized we still loved each other, Diana finished. Nothing had changed. If anything, the time apart made us more certain. That's when Nadine happened, Marcus said, looking at her with something that might have been genuine regret. I was 23, trying to convince myself that I could fall in love with someone else. You were brilliant, beautiful, everything I should have wanted. But you didn't, Nadine said flatly. You wanted Diana. Yes. But by the time I realized that you were pregnant, and I panicked. I couldn't marry you because I didn't love you the way you deserved, but I couldn't publicly acknowledge Julian because questions would be asked about why I wasn't marrying his mother. So I took the coward's path. I paid you off and hid. And then came Amara. Mrs. Richardson prompted. Marcus's hands clenched in his lap. You were different. You were real, genuine. You made me want to be better. For a while, I thought maybe I could actually have a normal life with you, that loving you could save me from this impossible situation with Diana. But you still loved her, Amara said. Yes, God help me, yes. And she was still in my life, family events, holidays, business meetings. We tried to stay apart, we really did. But 2 years into my marriage to you, we started the affair again. While Amara was home alone, Shanice spat, while she was crying herself to sleep, wondering why her husband didn't love her. Marcus flinched but continued. Diana got pregnant with Thomas about 6 months before I divorced Amara. We knew we had to end the marriage. I couldn't keep lying to you, couldn't keep hurting you. But I also couldn't tell you the truth because it would have exposed Diana, Amara finished. And if I'd known the truth, I wouldn't have signed the divorce papers quietly. I would have fought. I might have won more in the settlement. We needed you to go quietly, Diana admitted. We needed you to take the money and disappear. It sounds monstrous when I say it out loud, but that's the truth. And Nadine? You were still seeing her too? Marcus nodded miserably. Maya was born while I was married to you. Noah came later, after the divorce. I kept thinking I could manage it, keep Diana as my real love, keep Nadine as my secret family, keep you as my legitimate wife, until I figured out what to do. I thought I could control everything. You thought you were smarter than everyone, Richard said coldly. And you thought you could manipulate women, hide children, build a political career, and no one would ever connect the dots. Father, I'm not finished. Richard stood, his presence commanding the room. What neither of you are admitting is the worst part, the part my mother discovered. Tell them about the trust fraud. Marcus and Diana exchanged another look. This time, it was Diana who spoke. There are family trusts established by Marcus's great-great-grandfather in 1887. They contain assets worth approximately $8 billion, properties, stocks, art collections, business interests. The original trust document has a provision that if a direct male heir of the primary bloodline produces a legitimate heir with another member of the bloodline, that child inherits the entirety of the trust. Legitimate heir, Mrs. Richardson repeated, meaning a child born within a recognized marriage. Yes. The provision was meant to keep the fortune concentrated in the family. The old guard was obsessed with bloodlines, with keeping the money pure. Diana's voice dripped with disgust, even though she'd been trying to exploit that same provision. Thomas doesn't qualify because he was born out of wedlock. But if Marcus and I married, the trust would go to your future children, Isaiah finished. So you needed Marcus to secure his political future first, establish himself as respectable, married to Catherine Whitmore, positioned for a Senate run. Then you'd stage a divorce. Marcus would discover his love for Diana, they'd marry, and any children they had together would inherit billions. With Thomas quietly adopted and legitimized afterward, Mrs. Richardson added, making him retroactively eligible for part of the fortune. Clever. Immoral but clever. Amara felt sick. Catherine was just another pawn, like me, like Nadine. Catherine would have been well compensated, Marcus said defensively. Oh, well, that makes it all better then, Shanice snapped. Nadine had been quiet throughout this confession, but now she stood. My children, Julian, Maya, Noah, you've been paying me to keep them secret. You've denied them their father, their heritage, their place in the world. Also, you could play out this twisted scheme. I never wanted to hurt them, Marcus began. But you did, Nadine's voice cracked. Julian asks me every birthday why his daddy doesn't come to his parties. Maya writes letters to you that you never answer. Noah doesn't even know your face because you refused to be photographed with him. You've broken their hearts over and over again. And for what? Money. A political career built on lies. She turned to Richard. You say you didn't know about Thomas. Did you know about my children, about the others? Richard's silence was answer enough. You all knew, Nadine whispered. The whole family. You all knew Marcus had children he was denying, and you said nothing. That's not entirely true, Mrs. Richardson interjected. Eleanor knew, and she structured her will to punish this entire family for their complicity. Richard's inheritance from his mother is tied up in trusts that will only release if he cooperates fully with the investigation and reparations. The family business interests are frozen until the matter is resolved. Eleanor made sure that everyone would face consequences. She pulled out more documents from her seemingly endless briefcase. Eleanor also left detailed instructions about the children, all 6 of them. She established individual trust funds for each, funded from her personal fortune, funds that Marcus and Diana cannot touch, cannot contest, and cannot interfere with. Each child receives access to $50 million when they turn 25, with annual distributions for education and living expenses starting immediately. 50 million? Nadine gasped. Each. Eleanor believed children shouldn't pay for their parents' sins. She made sure they'd be provided for, regardless of how this legal battle plays out. Amara found herself blinking back tears. Eleanor Ashford, a woman she'd met only a handful of times. A woman who had died believing Amara hated her for not protecting her, had protected her anyway, had protected all of them. There's more, Mrs. Richardson continued. Eleanor left video testimony, recorded 2 weeks before her death. In it, she details everything she knew, everything she suspected, and every measure she took to ensure justice would be served. That video, along with all the evidence I've gathered, will be submitted to the district attorney tomorrow. Marcus, Diana, you're both likely facing criminal charges for fraud, perjury, and conspiracy. The room erupted. Marcus stood. Diana burst into tears. Richard sank into his chair, looking like he'd aged another decade. But Amara felt strangely calm. The whole truth was finally out. All the lies, all the manipulation, all the calculated cruelty exposed in the harsh light of day. Isaiah moved to stand beside her. What do you want to do? He asked quietly. You have more power in this room right now than anyone else. Eleanor's will gives you and Nadine the choice. Pursue full legal action and take the $1 billion inheritance. or accept a settlement and walk away. What does justice look like to you? Amara looked around the room, at Marcus, finally facing the consequences of his actions, at Diana, crying over the wreckage of their scheme, at Richard, broken by his son's betrayal, at Nadine, standing strong for her children, at Shanice, loyal and fierce, at the documents that could change everything. "I want to talk to Nadine," she said, "alone, because this decision affects her children as much as it affects me. Whatever we decide together." Mrs. Richardson nodded. "Take the library, it's private. I'll make sure no one disturbs you." As Amara and Nadine left the room, Amara heard Isaiah's voice, low and dangerous, addressing Marcus and Diana. "While they decide your fate, let me tell you what I think of people who use others as pawns in their games of wealth and power." The door closed, leaving Amara and Nadine in a book-lined sanctuary. They sat in leather chairs that probably cost more than most cars, surrounded by literary luxury, about to make a decision that would reshape multiple lives. "I want the money," Nadine said immediately. "Not for me, for my children, so they never have to feel less than because of who their father is or isn't, so they can build lives where they answer to no one." "I want justice," Amara said slowly. "I want Marcus to face consequences. Real consequences, not just financial penalties, but I also—" She trailed off, trying to articulate the feeling growing in her chest. "You also don't want to spend the next year of your life in courtrooms and depositions," Nadine finished. "You don't want your company associated with this scandal. You don't want to be defined by being Marcus Ashford's victim." "Yes, exactly, yes." They sat in silence for a moment. "What if," Nadine said slowly, "we took the money, but we also demanded criminal charges? Eleanor's video testimony can be submitted regardless of whether we cooperate. The DA can prosecute without us. We take what we're owed, and we let the justice system do its job. Can we do that? Can we take the money but not be involved in the trial?" "We can ask Mrs. Richardson." Nadine pulled out her phone. "But I think Eleanor gave us the power to set the terms. She wanted us to have control, to make the choices that were denied to us before." Her phone buzzed. She looked at it, and her face went white. "What?" Amara asked. "It's a message from Diana. She says if we pursue charges, she'll claim I blackmailed Marcus about Julian, that she has evidence I threatened to go public unless he paid me." "That's insane. You accepted his offer of support," which she's going to twist into extortion. "She's going to destroy me to save herself." Amara felt rage building in her chest. "Show me." Nadine handed over her phone. The message was detailed, calculated, and cruel. Diana had clearly been planning this contingency for a while, but as Amara read, she saw something Diana had missed, a detail in the threat that could backfire spectacularly. "She's bluffing," Amara said. "Look at this part. She claims you demanded payments in 2019, but Julian was born in 2017, and Marcus was already paying you by 2018. I saw the documents Mrs. Richardson showed us. Diana's timeline doesn't match the evidence." "You're right," Nadine breathed. "She's threatening me with a lie that's easily disproven. Which means she's desperate, which means we're winning." Amara stood and walked to the door. She opened it and called out, "Mrs. Richardson, we're ready. And we have something Diana just sent that you're going to want to see." The older woman appeared immediately, read the message, and smiled grimly. "Attempted witness intimidation. That's another charge to add to the list. Well done, Diana. You just made this much easier." 20 minutes later, they were all back in Eleanor's study. Mrs. Richardson had made calls. The district attorney was already drafting indictments. Federal investigators were involved because of the tax implications. Everything was moving with the inexorable force of justice too long delayed. "Here are your choices," Mrs. Richardson told Amara and Nadine. You can pursue full legal action against Marcus and Diana, including civil suits for fraud and emotional distress. You'll win, I guarantee it. The evidence is overwhelming, but it will take years and dominate your lives. Or you can accept the inheritance Eleanor left you, approximately 600 million each, after estate taxes and legal fees. Marcus and Diana will still face criminal charges based on Eleanor's testimony and the documentary evidence. You'll be required to provide depositions, but you won't have to testify in person unless you choose to. The burden of prosecution falls on the state, not on you. Amara and Nadine looked at each other. Some communication passed between them, wordless and complete. "We'll take the inheritance," Amara said, "but we have conditions. Name them." First, Marcus and Diana must publicly acknowledge all 6 children. Full legitimization. Name changes if the children choose. Public apologies. Second, they must establish additional trust funds for the children's education and mental health care, because therapy is going to be necessary after all this. Third, we want ironclad legal agreements that neither of them can ever challenge Eleanor's will or the children's inheritances. And fourth, she looked at Richard Ashford, we want the Ashford family to establish a foundation in Eleanor's name. A foundation dedicated to supporting women and children escaping manipulative relationships, funded with at least $100 million from the family fortune. And we want Nadine and me on the board, with full voting power. Richard stared at her for a long moment. Then, incredibly, he smiled. My mother would have loved that. Yes, to all of it. I'll have my lawyers draw up the documents immediately. Wait, Marcus said desperately. Father, you can't just give away $100 million. I can, and I will. You've cost this family far more than money, Marcus. You've cost us our integrity. If creating something good from this disaster can restore even a fraction of what you've destroyed, it's worth 10 times that amount. Diana stood abruptly. I won't agree to this. I won't have my son turned into a public spectacle. You lost the right to make demands when you threatened a witness, Mrs. Richardson said coldly. You'll agree to everything, Diana, or I'll make sure the prosecutor adds obstruction of justice to your charges. You could be looking at serious prison time. Diana sank back into her chair. Defeated, it was over. The confrontation, the revelations, the battle for justice, all of it culminating in this moment. Amara should have felt victorious. Instead, she felt exhausted. But there was one more thing to address. She turned to Isaiah Collins, who had stood quietly through all of this, a supportive presence without being intrusive. Why are you still here? You don't have to be involved in all this mess. He smiled. Actually, I think I do, because watching you stand up for yourself, for Nadine, for those children, it reminded me why I became a doctor in the first place. To help people, to use whatever privilege and power I have to make things a little more just. He stepped closer. And because I meant what I said earlier, I've been wanting to meet you, Amara Bennett, for months now. Not because of your ex-husband or his family drama, but because you built something real and meaningful out of nothing. Because you represent everything I believe in: resilience, creativity, dignity. This is literally the worst possible time to flirt with me, Amara said, but she found herself smiling despite everything. I know, which is why I'm not flirting. I'm simply stating facts. His eyes were warm. Dude, but when this is all over, when the dust settles and you've had time to process and heal, I'd very much like to take you to dinner, as two people who share a passion for dermatology and social justice getting to know each other. I'd like that, Amara heard herself say. Shanice made a small noise of approval behind her. Touching, Marcus said bitterly. You've won, Amara. You've got the money, the justice, and apparently a new man already lined up. Congratulations. Amara turned to face her ex-husband one final time. I didn't win, Marcus. You lost. There's a difference. I didn't do any of this to you. You did it to yourself. You could have been honest. You could have treated people with respect. You could have acknowledged your children, ended our marriage with integrity, built a life with Diana openly, if that's what you wanted. Instead, you chose cruelty. You chose manipulation. You chose to make everyone around you feel small so you could feel big. And now you're facing the consequences. That's not me winning. That's just justice finally catching up. She walked to the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I hope you learned something from this. I hope you become the kind of father those 6 children deserve, but I'm not going to wait around to find out. Nadine joined her at the door. Together, they walked out of Eleanor Ashford's study, leaving behind the family that had tried to break them both. And as they left, Amara heard Richard Ashford's voice one last time. My mother's favorite quote was from Maya Angelou. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Marcus, you've shown us exactly who you are. The question is whether you'll ever become someone different. The door closed on whatever Marcus's answer might have been. Amara and Nadine didn't need to hear it. 6 months later, Amara stood in the grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel, surrounded by some of the most powerful women in New York City. The Eleanor Ashford Foundation's inaugural gala was in full swing, a celebration of justice, healing, and second chances. She wore a dress of deep emerald green that set off her skin beautifully, her natural hair styled in elegant locks woven with gold thread. Around her neck hung a simple gold necklace, a gift from Richard Ashford, with a pendant that had belonged to Eleanor herself. The foundation had already helped over 300 women and their children escape manipulative relationships. It provided legal services, housing, job training, therapy, and most importantly, community. Women helping women, breaking cycles of abuse and control. Nadine stood across the room, radiant in red, talking animatedly with a group of donors. Her children were there too, Julian, Maya, and Noah, dressed in their finest, excited to be part of something important. They still saw their father occasionally, under court-supervised visitation. Marcus was facing 5 years of probation for fraud, mandatory therapy, and community service. Diana had taken a plea deal that kept her out of prison, but required her to surrender all claims to the Ashford family trusts. Thomas lived with Diana in a brownstone Richard had purchased for them. The boy was in therapy, processing the complexity of his parentage, but he was loved, acknowledged, and would grow up knowing his father's name, even if that father's legacy was complicated. "You look like you're plotting something," Isaiah's voice said in her ear as he appeared beside her with 2 glasses of champagne. "Always," Amara said, accepting the glass with a smile. "I'm thinking about expanding the foundation internationally, starting with communities in Nigeria and South Africa. Ambitious, I learned from the best." She nodded toward a photo on the wall, Eleanor Ashford, young and fierce, standing beside Sarah Washington. The 2 friends had their arms linked, facing the camera with defiant joy. Eleanor built her life around the principle that those with power have a responsibility to use it wisely. "I'm just trying to live up to that." Isaiah took her hand. In the 6 months since that night at the Ashford estate, they had become inseparable, not in a rushed, rebound way, but in the slow, steady building of something real. He understood her ambition, supported her healing, and loved her without trying to possess her. "I have something to tell you," he said, suddenly serious. Amara's stomach clenched. "That sounds ominous." "It's not. At least, I hope it's not." He led her to a quieter corner. "I've been offered a position as chief of dermatology at Johns Hopkins. It's an incredible opportunity. Research funding, teaching, the chance to shape the next generation of doctors who understand the importance of treating skin of color." "Isaiah, that's amazing." Then reality set in. "That's in Baltimore." "Yes. which is why I told them I needed time to think about it, because you're here, your company is here, the foundation is here. I don't want to choose between my career and my relationship with you." Amara's heart swelled. She thought about everything she'd learned in the past year, about Marcus, who had demanded she sacrifice everything for him while giving nothing in return, about power and control and manipulation masquerading as love. And she thought about this man standing before her, offering her the truth and the choice instead of demanding she conform to his plans. "When would you start?" she asked. 3 months. If I accept, then you should accept." Isaiah blinked. "You want me to take it? I want you to build the career you deserve. I want you to change medicine the way you dream about. I want you to be happy." She squeezed his hand. "And I want us to figure out how to make this work. Because I've learned that love isn't about sacrifice and control. It's about 2 people supporting each other's dreams. You'd do long distance. I'd do more than that. I'd open a Nubian Crown flagship store in Baltimore. I'd split my time between cities. I'd make it work because you're worth it." She smiled. "Besides, Shanice has been wanting to expand. This gives us the perfect excuse." Isaiah pulled her close, heedless of the watching crowd. "I love you, Amara Bennett. I love you too, Isaiah Collins." They kissed, and around them the room erupted in applause. Amara laughed, realizing that Shanice must have told everyone what was happening. But then a commotion at the entrance caught her attention. The crowd parted, murmuring in surprise. Marcus Ashford stood in the doorway. Amara tensed, but Isaiah kept his arm around her, a steady presence. Marcus looked different, thinner, worn, like someone who'd been through a crucible. He wore a simple suit, nothing like the expensive designer clothes he used to favor. He walked toward them slowly, and Amara saw something in his expression she'd never seen before, genuine humility. "I know I wasn't invited," he said when he reached them. "I know I have no right to be here, but I needed to see this, needed to see what you've built from the wreckage I created." "Marcus," Amara began, "please, let me finish." He looked around the room, at the photos of the women the foundation had helped, at the mission statement emblazoned on the wall. "My grandmother believed I could change. She left me one provision in her will that wasn't about punishment or consequences. She left me a letter." He pulled out an envelope, worn from repeated readings. "She wrote that she forgave me, even though I didn't deserve it. That she hoped someday I would become the man she raised me to be. That she believed in second chances, even for people who'd squandered every first chance they were given." His voice broke. "I've been in therapy, real therapy, not just court-mandated sessions. I'm trying to understand why I hurt people, why I thought I was entitled to use others as pawns, why I could look at my own children and deny them." "That's good," Amara said carefully. "I hope it helps you." "It is helping slowly, but I'm not here for sympathy or forgiveness. I'm here to give you this." He pulled out a check and handed it to her. "It's everything I received from the trust fund distribution this year. $5 million. I want it to go to the foundation, in my grandmother's name, in apology for everything I took from you." Amara stared at the check. $5 million. Money that could help hundreds more women, provide thousands of therapy sessions, change countless lives. "Why?" she asked. "Because I owe you more than money could ever repay. Because my children deserve to grow up seeing their father try to make amends. Because my grandmother was right, character matters, and I'm trying, finally, to develop some." He turned to leave, then paused. "I saw Julian last week. He told me about the pretty princess lady who helps mummies and kids. He was so proud when I told him that was you. Said he knew you were a hero the first time he met you." Tears stung Amara's eyes. "How is he?" "Better. They all are. Being acknowledged, being claimed, it's healing them. Slowly. Dr. Collins. I understand you recommended their therapist." Isaiah nodded. "Dr. Chen specializes in children processing family complexity. She's excellent." "Thank you for caring about my children when I didn't care enough." Marcus's voice was thick with emotion. "I don't expect you to trust me. I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to know that I see what I destroyed. And I'm trying to become someone who builds instead." He walked away without waiting for a response. Amara watched him go, feeling a complex tangle of emotions. Not forgiveness, that might never come, but perhaps the beginning of understanding that people could change, even if that change came too late to undo the harm they'd caused. "Well," Shanice said, appearing at her elbow, "that was unexpected." "Everything about the past 6 months has been unexpected," Amara replied. "True. But some surprises are good." Shanice nodded toward the entrance, where Richard Ashford had just arrived with 6 children in tow, all 6 of Marcus's children, dressed in their finest, excited and nervous. Nadine hurried over to her 3, hugging them close. Diana must have brought Thomas, because he was holding a nanny's hand, looking around with wide eyes, but it was Julian who broke free and ran to Amara. "Princess Lady, we're here!" "Mama said this is your party." Amara knelt down, laughing. "It is, and you're the guests of honor. All of you." She looked up to find Richard Ashford watching with approval. Over the past months, he'd become an unexpected ally. He testified against his own son, helped restructure the family business to prevent future abuses of power, and poured himself into making the foundation a success. "My mother would be proud," he said, joining them, "of all of you." Of this, the gala continued, a celebration of survival and strength. But as Amara mingled with donors and supporters, answered questions about the foundation's work, and planned for the future, she kept coming back to one truth. She had survived Marcus Ashford's cruelty. She had transformed her pain into purpose. She had built an empire from ashes and a legacy from heartbreak. But more than that, she had learned to see her own worth, to demand dignity, to refuse to be diminished. Later that evening, as the gala wound down, Mrs. Richardson approached Amara with yet another envelope. "This is the last one, I promise. Eleanor left it with instructions to give it to you only after the Foundation's first event." Amara opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a short letter in Eleanor's elegant handwriting. "Dear Amara, if you're reading this, then you've done what I hoped you would do. You've turned pain into power, sorrow into service. You've become exactly who you were always meant to be. I'm sorry I couldn't save you from my grandson's cruelty when I was alive. I'm sorry I wasn't braver, wasn't stronger. I told myself I was waiting for the right moment, gathering evidence, protecting you in the ways I could. But the truth is, I was afraid of tearing my family apart, afraid of facing the truth about the boy I'd helped raise. My fear cost you years of pain. I hope this foundation, this money, these opportunities can begin to balance that debt. But I want you to know something. You didn't need my money to be worthy. You didn't need my will to be valuable. You didn't need justice from my estate to be deserving of respect and love. You were always enough, Amara, always. The money is just money. The real inheritance I hope to give you is this, the unshakable knowledge of your own worth, the certainty that you deserve to take up space, to demand respect, to build empires and break hearts and change the world. You are not defined by how Marcus treated you. You are defined by how you rose from it. With all my love and admiration, Eleanor P.S. I've been watching Dr. Collins watch you at various charity events over the past year. Yes, I had spies everywhere. He's a good man. Don't let fear keep you from loving again. You deserve someone who sees your light." Amara laughed through her tears. Even from beyond the grave, Eleanor was looking out for her. "What does it say?" Isaiah asked. sliding an arm around her waist. "It says I'm enough." "That I always was." "She's right about that." Amara tucked the letter carefully into her clutch. Tomorrow she'd frame it and hang it in her office, a reminder on hard days of the woman who had believed in her when she couldn't believe in herself. But tonight, she was going to celebrate the foundation, celebrate survival, celebrate second chances and new beginnings. She was going to dance with Isaiah, laugh with Shanice, plan expansions with Nadine, and watch 6 children who'd been denied their father finally claim their birthright. She was going to take up space without apology, demand respect without explanation, build her empire without permission, because Amara Bennett had learned the most important lesson of all. She had never needed Marcus Ashford's approval to be worthy. She had never needed his family's acceptance to belong. She had never needed his love to be complete. She had always been enough. She had always been worthy. She had always been free. And now, finally, she believed it. 3 years later, standing in the hospital holding her newborn daughter, a baby girl with Isaiah's eyes and her smile, Amara would remember this moment, would remember the journey from broken girl to powerful woman, would remember Eleanor's words, "You are defined by how you rose." She would name her daughter Eleanor Sarah, after 2 women who taught her that character matters more than wealth, that dignity comes from within, and that the measure of a person is how they treat those with less power than themselves. But she would also teach her daughter something Eleanor never quite learned, that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is believe in your own worth before anyone else does. That you don't need to wait for justice to come from outside. That you can claim it yourself, demand it yourself, build it yourself. That you are and always have been enough.